I was just talking about that. I don't know if any of you guys know. He's a 10th grader also. Any of you guys know Miguel? Oh, too bad. I have a friend named Miguel. And I only recently found out that that was his name because I was introduced to him as Chili a few years ago. Like, oh, this is Chili. And so like, with a bunch of my friends, we don't really know each other's real names. We just have nicknames. And his name was Miguel. I just found out. So there's a 10th grader named Miguel. I looked at him, I asked him, do you have a nickname? And he goes, your nickname is now Chili. And he just goes, okay. He accepts this. But anyway, the real Chili, who I know, he came here a long time ago though, and I think I was mentioning him before. He got kicked out because him and some friends were over by the handball court. So one of them had a knife, and they were like throwing the knife against the wall for some reason. And he went over and he picked it up, and he picked it up just as a teacher was coming around the corner. So he's standing there holding the knife, and the teacher sees him holding the knife and asks him, whose knife is that? And Chili's no snitch, so he just doesn't say anything. So they expelled him for it. Today, he's a foreman. He's a construction foreman. I think he's like 26, 27 now, I think he is. He never graduated from high school. He never came back after that. He was so bothered by what had happened. And yet today, he got into construction. He works really hard. He would get there before he was supposed to start his shift. So he was there before everybody else. Well, he'd be there when the foreman got there because he wanted to learn the job. And then afterwards, when he would clock out, he'd go hang out with the foreman because the foreman still has to do a bunch of paperwork and stuff at the end. So he wanted to learn how to do that job. So he did a bunch of work before work and after work for free. And he'd tell me that a lot of his coworkers would be like, dude, you're crazy. Dude, you're putting like an extra 8, 10 hours a week and you're not even getting paid for it. That's stupid. But now he's a foreman. He got that gig and he's pretty young for having that kind of a job. He makes quite a bit of money doing it. So this was a guy who had something that he got kicked out of school, and he managed to do something with that energy. Now, the problem is that we hear stuff like that sometimes and we think, oh, so anyone can do something like that. No, he's also a very hardworking guy. In other words, the fact that he got kicked out of school was no reflection at all of his work ethic. Some people can work very, very hard and get by pretty well. Some people don't have to work hard at all, and they'll get by. Some people, work really, really hard, and they never get by. It can be a reflection of different, character traits. But, I'm sorry, personality traits. But anyway, he just happens to be really smart, and school just wasn't for him. And then he found some other way to do it. So, yeah. So when we talk about character, what are some things that we think of with regards to character? What's a character trait? Yeah. Brave. It would be brave. Okay. What else? We have a few of them up here. Yeah. Kind. Okay. You get one more. Smart. Okay. So someone is brave, kind, and smart. You guys are talking about me. So someone's, how does someone become brave? Yeah.
They face their fears.
They face fears, yeah. So one of them is to face fears. And so it's interesting because what that suggests is that you have to have those fears in the first place. Oftentimes we think of brave people as people who have no fear. If you have no fear and you face challenges, it's good. It's not a bad thing, and it's a neat thing if you have no fears. And by the way, there is a physiological trait that people who have like what's the easiest way of saying it? The amygdala in your brain. If you have a small one, then you have less of a kind of like a fear center of your brain. So you'll feel less fear than other people just kind of naturally. Psychopaths tend to feel less fear than other people. They don't fear consequences. So if you don't have very many, like let's say for example there's a dark room and you have no fear of it and you walk into it, I guess that's cool, but I don't know that you're necessarily particularly brave because you're not overcoming that fear. If we understand this to be the definition. But if you see a dark room and you're just like, you're just terrified, pissing yourself, and then you walk in anyway, well there's some bravery that's there. I once saw an interview with a guy who stormed the beach at Normandy, World War II. You guys know a bit about that when the Allies stormed the beaches. It was just a meat grinder, man. The Germans were up on the cliffs and just training machine guns down, and the Allies' job was to get off of some boats and run up the beach and try not to get killed. And so I saw this interview with a bunch of them. I think it was like the 60th anniversary of Normandy or something like that. And maybe in the 50th, it was a while ago. And this reporter goes over and, you know, these old men are like walking up the beach, or I'm sorry, like the grassy area at the top rather. And this reporter goes up and like sticks a microphone on one of their faces and asks one of the dumbest questions you can ask someone like that. She goes, "What's it feel like to be a hero?" You know, and he's standing in a place where he lost a lot of his friends, and he's genuinely baffled by this question. He goes, "Hero? I wasn't a hero. I was just a coward who kept moving forward." And a lot of times that's what bravery is. It is not that you don't feel fear. If you feel fear and then you go forward anyway. But the first things first, you have to have a fear to face. It's kind of like, how do you become a hero? Well, to become a hero, you have to have some kind of an enemy to overcome. There has to be a villain for you to overcome. If there's no villain, then there's no heroism that's there. To be kind. How about to be kind? What do you have to do to be that? This one's really hard, by the way. Yeah. Ooh, so you have to accept people, and that's so damn hard to do, man. Because most people don't deserve to be accepted, do they? Depending on the mood you're in. You know, some days it's easier to accept people, other days it's harder to accept people. And that's what makes this one so damn hard. Because people don't necessarily change, but this is almost like an emotion that you go through. Like bravery is kind of like a trait. Being smart, that's a trait. You know, it's a thing that you can become. But this is a mood. Being kind is almost based off of a mood. Like if you're in a good mood, you're more likely to accept people. So to do this, no matter what your mood is, that's really hard. Because otherwise, if you say, like for example, I'll talk to people and people will claim that they're a good person. I'll ask, "Are you really a good person?" "Well, yeah." I go, "So you know, you're nice to people?" And then people will invariably say, "I'm really nice to people." And then I just kind of change my tone and go, "Are you really nice to people?" "Well, I mean, I'm nice to people who are nice to me." Well, then that's not kindness. That's just kind of giving a person what they give you. That's just reciprocity. But to be this thing no matter what, and especially to be this thing even if you've undergone some kind of heartbreak, even if you've undergone some kind of betrayal, even if you've undergone some kind of fill in the blank of whatever it is, to continue to be this thing is very difficult. No matter what your mood, no matter what you've gone through. But if you can do that, then that's a solid trait, man. It's just really hard to do for a lot of us. And even if you're a kind person, there's probably little slips here and there in it. And that's hard for us to sometimes kind of come to grips with. And just because you slip sometimes doesn't mean you're not kind. Just like sometimes if you kind of recoil back from your fears, that doesn't mean you're not brave. It just means that you're human, and we all kind of stumble in these ways. And of course, to be smart, I really do mean this. How do you become smart?
Study.
Okay. I didn't like the fact that everyone's just no idea. Tell us. So maybe study. And I ask that because sometimes we'll distinguish between intelligence, of course, and wisdom. So in this case here, you can study. If you want to know a lot, it's not complex. It's hard to do, but it's simple. You go down to the library and you start at A, and you work your way to Z. And once you do all that, you'll be one of the best read people in the entire world, even in a library as small as ours. I understand, of course, that's thousands of books, so that's a lot of work to do towards that. I have a what do you call it? Suggested reading list that I send out to people sometimes. And they all contain like free PDFs of things to read. And when I was looking at this recently, because someone reached out to me and asked me if I could send them the suggested reading list. And I was looking at it, I'm like thinking, my goodness, that's, because I could look at the list, it's not super long, it's like 3 pages. And again, they all have hyperlinks, so you can get the text for free. And I was looking at it, and I thought, geez Louise, that's a lot of time, man. And I read all those books, and I just sit there sometimes and I think, like, that's a lot of time spending reading, you know? Was it this class I was talking about Steam? Right? Any of you guys play video games on Steam? Yeah, it can be an incredibly humbling thing, man. Because when you play a game, you notice how when you're going to the title of the game, it tells you how many hours you spent playing it? You know? You ever look at that, or do you just kind of pretend like it doesn't exist? You know? It'd be neat if towards the end of your life, maybe, maybe death came to you and could provide like a ledger of all the time you spent doing everything in your life, but categorize it, you know? Like, okay, so you're about to die in 5 minutes, death comes in, introduces himself to you, says you need to sign this form, but first he has to go over your life with you, and he's like, you spent X number of hours eating, and then you spent like X number of hours, I don't know, like on the toilet or whatever, and you spent X number of hours playing video games. And it'd be even interesting, like you spent X number of hours being nice to people, and you spent X number of hours like trolling or shit-talking people. You know? It'd be neat. And so, anyway, I sometimes look at this, and like students will ask me, like, have you ever read such and such? And a lot of times I have, I'll say, oh yeah, I have. And it always like, it always just hits me, I'm like, geez Louise, like what else could I have been doing during that time? I was reading, there's this book called The Cantos by a poet named Ezra Pound. And it was one of the books I carried with me all the time when I was in college. Literally, I had a backpack, a normal backpack, and I had a bag, and in that bag were 3 books that I carried with me at all times. And I remember one time I was sitting in this hallway reading it, and my professor comes out. I'll just say this. I'll just tell the story. It'll take care of itself. My professor comes out, and he looks and he goes, "What are you reading?" I said, "Oh, I'm reading The Cantos, Ezra Pound." And my professor goes, "Why?" And I said, "I want to understand it." And he shakes his head and he goes, "Scanlon, there's nothing to understand in there." And he walks back inside of his office, and I'm just like, shut up. What do you know? This was a guy who, he'd been a professor. He just died recently. The guy was a professor for 60-something, it's like 62 years the guy was a professor. You know, it was amazing. And so I finally got to and it's a big book too, by the way. It's a big old book. And it's written in 17 different languages, which meant I had to go out and find people to help translate. I had to go up online, and I got to the end of the book, got to the last page, folded my arms, and guess what I discovered? He was right. That book said nothing. I was like, God damn it. That's a lot of time to spend on something that ends up at the end not amounting to much. But that's a lot of life, though. You know, you have to be willing to take steps to grow into something. Because I took a big L on that one. That's a lot of hours, man. That's a lot of hours I wish I could get back. Literally, it's hundreds of hours. But that tragedy, or that defeat, taught me a little something. So after reading that, I made a decision in my life, which was, I will never read another book that's more than 200 pages. It might sound silly, but you know, you can get through a 200-page book pretty quickly. Once it gets over that, for some reason, my reading just slows way down. And I just think like, man, I want to hear what you can say in 200 pages, not more than that. I'm not saying that that's necessarily a triumph, but it's something that you can learn from. You know, triumph isn't our triumphs which define us, but our tragedies. Because triumph brings out the best in us, of course. But tragedy is what shows us what we're actually made of. You've heard before that saying that it doesn't matter if you win or lose, it's how you play the game. Anybody believe that? In jiu-jitsu, there's a saying, you win some and you learn some. So the idea is that even when you lose, at least you learn from it. So they never accept defeat. It's always you win some and you lose some. That's not true. I've lost before. It sucks. I finished second at a tournament one time, and I got pissed off and I left. I just jumped in my truck and drove home. I didn't even go up and get my medal. And you know, afterwards they had like an award ceremony. I didn't even go to it. I was like, this is stupid. I left. And my friend called me up. He's like, hey man, where are you? They're calling you up there for the picture. I'm like, I went home. He's like, why? I go, because second place sucks. He's like, I understand. But then, after that, I won the next several. And what did I tell the second place person? Good job, man. You were tough out there. Good on you, man. Second place. That's amazing. There is a funny story about that, though. He was whispering, saying, "You suck, dumb suck, dumb shit." One of my there's this big difference between like competitors. A friend of mine was in a match, and she was I guess the person she was fighting was just giving up like halfway through, and she was just like breathing heavy, and she was just like, I can't. And my friend who was beating her just said, you can do this, don't give up, keep fighting, your coaches are watching, your family's watching, keep fighting. And I'm like, my God, you're a way better person than me. That would have been me, like, I can't. You're right, you can't. Give it up. Look in your children's eyes and then give up. Teach them a lesson. But maybe that she's a better person. Not maybe. She's definitely a better person than me. But the point is that these are the things that actually show us who you are. Are you a brave person? Well, you don't know until you're confronted with a fear. are you a kind person? You won't know that until you're faced with a person who you don't want to accept. Are you smart? Well, you won't know that until you have to actually use this kind of stuff. And so unfortunately, this is a learning experience. The tragedies that you go through, you have to go through them. Because without going, well, you don't have to, I guess, but if you don't go through them, you'll never really know who you are. You might say who you are. You might say, oh yeah, I'm brave and kind and smart. But if you're ever asked for your receipts on it, you better have some. Because it isn't so much that the other person's going to think down on you. Who cares? You probably never see them again as long as you live. But that's the kind of thing that you're going to have to carry with you and take home. You know? And then that's the thing that you have to carry with you through life. And so it'd be better to be able to do these things. That's why I've said before, if you ever find yourself lying about yourself, that's an important step. Like if you're telling people that, oh yeah, I ran a marathon one time, and in your head you know you never ran a marathon. That tells you something about yourself. It's not just that you're a liar. It's not just that you want the attention of other people. It's that you wish you were someone who ran marathons. So now what can you do?
Run the marathon.
Go run a marathon. Doesn't mean you have to win it. Doesn't mean you have to run the whole thing. Run as much as you can, walk as much as you have to, but finish it. And then when you get to the end, it's over 26 miles. You'll be standing there, you have blisters on your feet, you're going to be tired, and you're going to say, now I can tell people I did a marathon, and be honest about it. You know, whatever it is that you lie about yourself, that if you use it properly, it can set goals for you to tell you who you want to be and give you something towards which to orient your life. You know? So I guess you can think of them positively that way as well. So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?